everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Life After Ball with Global Life. Today we have Roneeka Hodges, and I'm really excited about this guest. Hey, Ron.
Hi, Abby.
How are you?
I am well, and yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you here. I know that you have a great story as far as your transition and great success from this past summer. So I'm definitely excited for you to be here and share it with us.
Well,
So
thank
I'll get started by asking you to tell the few people that might not know who is Roneeka Hodges, your college story, your pro story, and how you got to where you are today.
you. Okay, I'm Roneeka Hodges. Like she said, I started my collegiate journey at LSU. Um, I played for 3 years. I'm originally from New Orleans. I transferred to Florida State. I ended up graduating from there. I played there for 1 year. Was drafted by the Houston Comets in the 2005 draft in the second round. Houston, all right. I played 11 years in the WNBA and I played 15 years total overseas.
All right, Ron, so you had like a very long career. You were able to play for 15 years. Throughout that career, did you know when the end of the 15 years would come, or it was something that just kind of hit you and you knew that, okay, it's over. What do I do next?
No, well, when it started, I definitely didn't think about playing for 15 years because that would always be like the running joke as the young players on the team don't play till the wheels fall off. Like, the wheels didn't fall off, but I probably played 3 years longer than I should have played. And I think uh, starting out, I figured, okay, maybe it's time to retire. But,
Mhm.
like when you're in it and you still love it, it's not that easy to just walk away. Your mind and your heart both had to be ready to actually do it. And I think I started thinking about it probably like in 2016, but I wasn't ready in the mind and the heart to walk
Mhm.
away. I think my mind was saying, okay, girl, you should walk away. But my heart was still in it for so
Yeah.
many different reasons that I continued on. So I think it wasn't like I put a number on it when I would be finished. I think when I was ready to walk away, my mind and my heart, I was able to walk away freely with no regrets and no attempts to try to come back.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I guess that is something that happens a lot, right? Like players, I'm ready to quit, and then half a season later, like, no, I'm going back, and they quit the job that they started, or disappoint somebody. So that's good that you were ready mentally and emotionally about it, right? But let me ask you this, because you said you played 3 years too long. So
Mhm.
during those 3 years, were you at least thinking about, okay, it's coming close that I feel like it's over. What do I do next? Or it was more so, I'll keep playing and what comes next, we'll figure it out.
No, no, I don't think that was my mindset. If I'm being totally transparent, like within that time frame when I realized that it was coming to an end, um, it was like progressions. I'm usually a gym rat. I'm usually that person who always wants to work out.
Mm-hmm.
When I start going to the gym and I put 60 minutes on the clock and I'm like, whatever is done in this 60 minutes is done. Whatever is not done in this 60, it's not done. I'll do it tomorrow. So when I got to that point, I knew that it was time. So I started preparing my mind for what I wanted to do, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like intentionally. So in 2016, I was probably like 34. So that means that my teammates were rookies, younger players, and I found myself in more of a mentorship role, but it was accidentally. I never thought that I wanted to be a coach because in my mind, it was like, okay, I've been playing for 15 years. The thing that I want to get away from is living out a bag,
Mm-hmm.
packing, traveling, missing Christmas, missing birthdays, missing my family, missing all these things. I just wanted to live life.
Yeah.
Um, but the teammates became younger, and I found myself caring. Not that I didn't care about winning, but I cared more about mentoring them, making sure they knew how to play the game the right way and they knew what was coming outside of basketball, more like just teaching them life lessons, like how to be as a person off the court. And when that became important to me, I think I started to think about it in my head. Okay, maybe I should really go and do something else.
I think that's the best case scenario, right? When your next career kind of materializes itself organically.
Yeah,
Um, because at the end of the day, it was almost like you didn't leave the game, you left the game as a player, but you're still able to pour your love and passion for the game in another way, right? To the new generation of players.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So you were one of the first players that believed in myself and Global Life and what we're trying to do with helping players transition after sports. And I remember that when we first met, you reached out just kind of trying to figure out, hey, what it looks like for other career paths that were outside of basketball when you were trying to figure out, do I really want to be a coach or not? And I would love for you to share what made you reach out or what made you feel like, that was the that right timing and the right thing to do. And how did that help you in your path in making that the final decision of, what, coaching is where I want to be?
Well, that's a loaded question, but I'll lead with the connection and the relationship that I had with you, knowing your background, knowing what you had to offer to former players, and also knowing that you were a former player just like me, and you transitioned successfully. So I think that's a huge part of the transition is having a support system, like having people that you can count on and call for advice that are really true friends. Because sometimes in a business you have teammates and you have people, but that's not necessarily your friends. It's not somebody that you're going to call on if you need help. So I appreciated you for that. I'll start with that. I appreciated you taking my call and being able to help with the things that I just didn't know. And I think part of the transition too is understanding that you just don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know, you have to have somebody that's around you that could kind of guide you and steer you in some direction. Not saying that you're going to take all the advice that they give, but you're going to listen, and it could possibly spark your mind to something. Because I mean, at that point, I had been playing basketball since I was 9 years old. And once I retired, I was like 36, 37. So really, that's all you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I think that having that friendship with you was something that was important for me.
No, I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that. And I think for me it was the same thing, where like knowing that you trusted me
Mm.
enough to come and ask that question. Because I feel like as an athlete, we're scared sometimes to show vulnerabilities and not knowing, because we're being so good at one thing that now when we transition, we're in a stage of life where we might not be the best at that. And not everyone wants to show that weakness, right? So being able to have a support system and have someone you can go to without feeling like, man, I don't want to sound dumb. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But knowing that you actually get the support to push forward, I think that's what I'm trying to do with Global Life, right? Obviously, with you, it was a experimental phase because you were, a friend that I can help and I can still build what I'm trying to build. But generally speaking, like for all athletes, that's the goal. I want them to feel that they have a home where someone cares about them as a person and as an athlete to transition to the next stage, right?
Yeah, I think that it's a scary situation, just walking away from the only thing you know without really any other experience other than basketball. And I think just having that resource, and we always say that hindsight is 2020, but if I'm looking back on it now, I'm so happy that I was able to reach out and rely on you for the little things that I didn't know. You need to think about having a resume. You need to think about how you're going to interview for a job. You don't know what they're going to ask you because you've never been on an interview before. So
Yeah.
I think that having all of those things are essential. Um, but I wouldn't trade it. Like I wouldn't trade any of those experiences for the world, because some of those things that I went through during my transition, it was the preparation. It was the preparation to get where I am now. Had I not went through those things, I wouldn't be where I am now. And that was the preparation that I missed the 15 years that I was playing. So that's how I ended up looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That makes perfect sense. And I'm glad I'm able to be a little nuts in your journey.
Well, thank you.
And actually also plug because you are a champion. So I feel like, your journey got you to being a coach to where you actually got to win a championship with the WNBA. And that's a great accomplishment that I feel like we should brag about for at least a couple of seconds. So tell me how that experience was.
That experience was awesome. It took me a while to really process what actually happened. Um, but it was an indescribable feeling. It was just like a rush of emotions, like from top to bottom. And I think it took me back to my childhood, because that those are the things you dream about, just winning a championship and all of that. But this one was on the highest level. It wasn't just any championship. And I think about my journey as a professional. I think about the success that I had. I think about the career that I had, all the stops that I made overseas, all the teams that I played for in the WNBA, and to win it as a coach. I never really expected it, and I think that's what made it that much better. Obviously, you want to win it as a player, but to win it as a coach and as a young coach, I think that it was just an awesome feeling, and it I don't know. It gave me, it's not that I didn't believe, but it's just like, it was one of those things where, yeah, all of this stuff was for a reason. The
Mm.
early morning workouts, the changing the jobs, the sacrifices that you have to make, all the time that you have to put in as a coach. To me, it all went together with
Yeah.
playing experiences and a coaching experience, and it was just an awesome, awesome feeling.
Yeah, no, I was really excited. I'm not gonna lie. And I think I haven't watched as much WNBA as this past 2 seasons because I kind of stopped watching when most of my friends stopped playing because I didn't
Uh-huh.
know these kids. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then a bunch of y'all became coaches, and I was like, okay, I can start watching again. There's Ron here, there's Tanisha there. Like, okay, I'll start watching again. But this season was just really exciting. And when I saw that, New York made it to the end and you got to win, I was like, oh, that's so awesome. So I was really excited and really proud and very happy for you.
Well, thank you. Go
You're
ahead.
welcome. So let me ask you this advice for the players, right? So now I feel like it's a very different generation than what we were. The kids are making money in college. The WNBA players are making enough money to not to have to go overseas or at least, endorsement and things like that are starting to grow. But when the game is over, the game is over.
Mhm.
So what would your advice be to the players now, whether they are the top ones that may not never need to have a job again in the future, or the ones that will need a job to start preparing for what life after sports could potentially look like?
I think the way that the game, the sport, the opportunities that's out there is totally different than when we played. So
Hmm.
I think taking advantage of all the opportunities that's being presented outside of the court, letting your interests be known, like all of those things, I think they're essential. And using your voice, using the platform that's there for you to advocate for the things that are important to you, because I think that that's huge. I think that it's an avenue, it's a chance for players to show themselves, like show who you are as a person, talk about what you're interested in. And then one of the most important things, and I would always say this, is be a good human, be a good professional, all of those things. I think that that could take you a long way. So that would be the advice that I would give is just take advantage of the resources because they're there,
Yeah.
and anything it is that you want to do, anything you want to accomplish that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with basketball, I think there's opportunity for that to happen because the ball is going to stop bouncing. You could have success now, you could have success for 5 years, but what about 5 years after that? What about 10 years after that? So I think just understanding that, laying that foundation, and continuing to build off that.
No, that's great advice, and that's very true, right? Being able to tap in your interest and learn what else you might be good at outside of sports, outside of basketball is important, right? Because it's kind of hard to figure it out when you're in a rush to move on to the next step.
Yeah,
So being able to go through that while you still have basketball on your side, while you still have the support of people that are your fans and love you because you're a basketball player, take advantage of that, right?
yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge for Ron the person, not just the athlete, but the person transitioning out of sports?
I think the biggest obstacle for Ron the person was figuring out how to exist in society as a regular person and not Ron the professional basketball player. I think that that was a challenge. Like I played overseas for 15 years. I owned a house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for probably 15 years, but I lived in a house maybe 20 days out of the year. So I had to make an adjustment when it was time for me to go home and live life. If something was broken or if something went wrong, I had to figure out on my own who to call to fix it, because as a player, that's not something that you have to worry about. You make one call and it's done. So figuring out all those things on my own. And then once I realized that I wanted to be a coach, and then I had to uh, find what was next for myself and interviewing and going through that whole process, I think hearing that I was overqualified for a coaching position or underqualified and don't have enough experience for a coaching position um, in a profession that I consider myself an expert in just because I played for so long. So just going through that and feeling all of those emotions, I think that that was the biggest obstacle for me. But in the end, I understand what it was for, and I think that it better prepared me for what was to come.
No, that makes sense and 100% relatable because I will never forget when I first got my first paycheck
Uh-huh.
working a regular job. And I have, had a budget for what I want to spend for my apartment because I went online. It said use 20% of your paycheck because I not paid rent before. Everything is paid for us, right?
Mhm.
And I get my first paycheck, and it's not what I thought it would be because it took out taxes.
Texas. Oh, oh,
I had
see.
no idea. No one ever told me that. And I felt so dumb. I'm like 37 years old, not knowing that taxes come out of your paycheck. And I'm like, yeah, this can be real life, right? So 100% relate to being able to just be a regular human in the regular world because most people know that. So we're thinking about the second half of the story, right? Like, what would be the biggest success for you, right? I'm assuming it would be the championship, but I want to hear it from you.
I'll lead with the championship. That has been the biggest success to date. But if I think about the whole picture, I would just say my journey and how I started on this coaching path. I started out as a volunteer at a high school in New Orleans. I volunteered for a couple of months there. It initially started with just one of those things where I would go 2 days a week and just help out. But those 2 days turned into five. I would just get in my car and drive to New Orleans and show up and just give it my all to the kids. And that was kind of like an eye opener for me. Like, okay, if you're putting this much energy and effort into something that you're not getting paid any money for, the love was there. So I was like, okay, let's explore this. Let's see what else could come out of this. Um, and it was just one day that I ran into Nikki Fargas. Now she is now the president of Las Vegas Aces, but she had been a longtime coach at LSU, and I would see her every time I go home, probably 10 years. And she would always ask me if I wanted to coach. Ron, what you doing? You want to coach? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I don't want to coach. But this particular day when I saw, I was like, oh, coach, I want to coach. And she's like, okay, you want to coach? Call me tomorrow. Just like that. And I was like, okay, cool. I didn't get a chance to call her tomorrow. She called me at like 10 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Listen, I don't have any money to pay you, but I could teach you everything. Come and I'll teach you everything. And then I ended up volunteering with her. And then that was an awesome experience. It was another avenue of support, like we just talked about, somebody who's willing to give you a chance. It didn't have anything to do with money. It was just about giving back to the game, you know. So that opportunity was another eye opener for me, and it was like, okay, there's a seat at the table for you. So come, let's see what it is. See if you really committed to doing this. And I went and I enjoyed. I loved every moment of it. I learned a lot. And then I ended up getting a job at Old Dominion University with Delisha Milton Jones was my first job. And that experience was invaluable to me. And I think that that was the start of my coaching career. So just going through all of that stuff and having people that supported me and people who were in my corner, I think that journey in itself was a win for me, considering where I am today and knowing where I want to go in the future.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That's definitely a great story, a great journey. And not a lot of people, I think, would be able to humble themselves and say, you know what, I'll do this for free just to see if my heart is really in it. And also to
Mhm.
see if I'm good, right? Because you could want to be a coach and not be a good coach, or you realize you don't like coaching, or you can stand the kids. Whatever the case may be, it could have not been the right fit for you, but you really put everything that you wanted to put into it to find out and to see if it really was where your heart needed to be. And I think that was the best case scenario, and you got a ring to prove it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So I think I have last two questions for you. One is more so for me. So for what you know about Global Life and what we're doing, what would be your advice as far as the direction that we're going? Like, is there anything that you think we should be doing different or that we should be adding? Like anything that you have for us, open to hear it.
I think that you guys are moving in the right direction overall because I know for a fact that these are the things that's needed, what you're providing for the transition. Because, like I mentioned earlier, it's so many obstacles and so many things that you're going to go through that it doesn't matter how well prepared you are, you just don't know what you don't know because you're gonna run into some situations where you just don't understand or you just don't quite get it. But it's always beneficial to have somebody who's had those experiences already that could kind of um, show you the ropes or just give you a little bit of advice or just to have that shoulder to lean on. I think that that's important. And I think what you're providing is awesome and is necessary and we need more of it.
Well, thank you. That's definitely important for me to hear, right? Because I can have a vision, but if no one needs it, it's just a vision. So getting confirmations from people like yourself and other folks that I interviewed always helps me keep grounded and keep going, because I built this in 2016 and it's still not where it needs to be, because it keeps changing and keeps evolving into more, right? Like now there's technology, so I'm trying to implement pieces of technology to make it even more useful for the players. So thank you for that. And then I will close with this. One thing that we talked about earlier is maintaining those connections and, taking advantage of your presence while you're still playing. And a topic that comes up a lot is networking, which is very difficult, in my opinion, to do. From your experience and what you see, what would you suggest or, tell other players and athletes in any sports to do in regards to maintaining like a network and keeping in touch with the people that care about them while they're still playing, so that they can have the connection after they're done playing?
Well, that's a loaded question. That's a loaded question, and I think as a player, sometimes you don't necessarily understand that. You don't understand the importance and the value of relationships with people that's not necessarily your teammates, because we so set on what we're trying to do and the people that we are interacting with every day that we're not necessarily thinking about what might need to happen 5 years later, or what might need to happen 10 years later, whether that's a teammate, whether that's the janitor, whether that's the president of the team, whether that's the equipment manager, whether that's the ball kids. We don't understand that, I don't think. Some of us, I should say. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's just not in people's personality to mingle and to network and to do all those things. And that's totally fine. But I think that when you have genuine people and you build genuine relationships and you understand that somebody's in your corner, or that somebody could possibly help you with something in the future, or you could help somebody with something in the future, I think that we have to understand that it's important to foster those relationships and to continue to build those relationships, because you just never know. And I think there's always going to be a time, there's always going to be a day where you're going to have to pick up the phone and you're going to have to call somebody to help you do something, or somebody's going to call you to ask you to help them do something. And I think just being a good person, I'm going to keep preaching that, being a good person, treating people the right way. I think that it goes a long way in life. It goes a long way in a profession. And it's just an absolute must.
I 100% agree. So thank you for that. So I think this is the end of our interview for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated having you. I really enjoy, hearing your story, and I hope that, people that listen and they tune in, whether they're watching the YouTube or they're reading the LinkedIn article, they get something out of it, right? They're able to get inspired, to get the advice, and they use it to their advantage for whatever their next step is. So Ron, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Abby.
And for everyone else, as always, if you have an athlete that you would like for us to talk to, send a DM, leave a comment, send a pigeon. I don't care. Just let us know. And we'll see you with the next episode. Thank y'all. Bye.